Okay, it's August 23rd, 2012, and I'm standing across the street from the home where I grew up in. Moved here, I guess, when I was 5. And I try to sort of walk back through all the things that I can remember since then. So moved here in 1952 when I was 5 years old. And of course it looked quite different then. House was basically what you see there is kind of the end product of a couple of different builds. Initially we lived in basically the foundation, and then the top was added 4 years later in 1956. Unfortunately I have to deal with a little bit of road noise here, which was less of a problem back then, of course. But here we come up on the driveway, which I can remember as a kid. I had to help my dad dig this driveway. He essentially built everything you see here pretty much himself. In the house, and you notice if I look to the right here, you'll see homes down the street and all built up. None of that was here. We were the only house out this road from a half mile from the school. And next to us was an old log cabin, which is totally obscured in the woods, and supposedly was one that General Braddock used and stayed in when he was here during the, I guess, Revolutionary War. But anyway, as we walk up the driveway, this has changed quite a bit. Used to be that bank straight ahead was where the driveway ended, and there was a kind of a hole dug for a two-car garage that never ended up being built. And instead, they ended up adding the garage onto the house in the back later on. I don't remember exactly when. But as you can see behind the lot, as we look straight up the hill, it's all forested and really thick. At the time we moved here, it was incredibly thick. I remember one of the first memories I have is with my sister Elaine and walking back up off the road, and only I think we were 5 or 6 feet off the road or 10 feet off the road, and literally we couldn't even see the road anymore. It was so thick and felt like we were lost. But anyway, the stone walls that are there, I helped build a lot of those with my dad. We hauled all the stone ourselves from quarries nearby in the pickup truck. I used to have to come home from work from school actually, when I was in high school, every night and dig a pickup truckload of dirt and haul it across the road as we were excavating this and dump it across the road there that you see. Now I'll take a walk around the front of the house, so you can see what that looks like there. And it's changed. This landscape wall or railroad tie wall was not there before. The house just kind of sloped off from the porch there that you see. But again, when I moved here, not to stop for the vehicles, when I moved here in '52, of course, there was no house on top, only the bottom. So as you guys stop talking here, as you can hear, the traffic in the background is a pain. It's constant and chronic, and cars zooming up and down the road, and so it's pretty different than the sleepy road that I grew up on. But anyway, you can see the red cinder block there. That was the walls of the house that we grew up in. The windows have changed a bit. This piece there by the porch that sticks out was to the window framed in white was a fruit cellar where my mom kept all her canning, and the other side where the glass block, which really wasn't there, that's kind of new, was where we stored our coal, because we had a coal furnace, and you can just barely see it there through the bush in the back. Is a door where we used to back up the pickup truck and shovel coal into the garage. We of course got our own coal from a local coal mine down the road. We'd go down and they'd load up the truck, and we'd come home and unload it, and that's what we used for heating there. The shed you see there to the left was added on by Dan, my nephew. He's married to my niece, Sarah, my sister Joyce's daughter. Anyway, this is the extended lot to the other side. There used to be a gigantic big tree right there. I guess maybe I'm not sure what kind of tree it was, but it was really, really big, and that eventually fell down. And then all along the border here that you see at the top of the lot above the road, my dad, we moved in and planted pine trees, little 8-inch seedlings. And at one point, those trees grew and grew and got too big, and they all had to be taken down. But they were probably 40 feet high, gigantic pine trees. In fact, I can show one here in the back. This maple tree here is kind of an interesting story, along with some others in the back. You can see how tall it is. It's probably 60 feet high. Those were planted by me. I literally pulled out little saplings, maybe a ½ inch in diameter, out of the woods up above, and came down and stuck them in the ground because I liked maple trees, and they grew, of course, like crazy. So there's one there, and you can see there's more in the back. You can see up there in the distance there's 3 of them, 2 on either side of the swing and the 3rd one. But they were all, I was probably maybe 8 or 10 years old when I planted those trees there. And of course they grew like crazy here in Pennsylvania. So here through the woods, you can see how thick it is. You can just see the roof over there back in the trees. It is the old log cabin. Literally, it was a very, very old log cabin. There was a family living in there when I was growing up here. And like I say, that supposedly has a history. Some rumor that George Washington actually stayed there once with General Braddock, but don't really know. I haven't looked at that history in quite a long time. And then the other interesting thing is that cabin. This was actually, you won't see any of it here because the woods is so thick, but all up through there, as we're looking straight ahead here, was a huge apple orchard. Dozens of apple trees back there. We used to get apples all the time from there for pies and stuff, but it had kind of gone wild, and by the time we were here and growing up, the trees were still, you know, supplying apples, but it was fast being overgrown by everything else. So, and this is an idea of the pine trees, that some of which my dad planted. Give you an idea of how big they are now. Some of the ones in front were actually quite a bit larger than these. So, pretty amazing to think back and how little 8-inch seedlings that my dad got for next to nothing and planted all around the house. Our house was completely hemmed in by these pine trees, and we couldn't even see the road from the house. Now this is the back of the house, as you see, and the reality is the brick portion was the only part of the house that was a second add-on. The white there, which is a kind of a family room that's over top of the garage, was really a third add-on, if you will. So the house initially, as I mentioned, was only a cellar. As you can see, the block there, and there was basically a wooden cap on that, a flat roof, and that's where we lived. And this is the entrance to our house that I knew for 4 years before we added the top on. So I'm going to walk down. These stairs are different. This used to just be old stone here along the sides and concrete steps, but it looks like they've redone it with brick and kind of artificial things. So now I'm going to walk down these stairs that I entered many a time as a kid, and into where we lived initially, which was the basement. Now this basement is actually quite different than it was when I grew up. There was really a wall here to the left and a door, and that was my parents' bedroom. And we had one bath that you'll see here in the back. Try to get some lights on. But even this has changed because this wall really wasn't here. You can see the block wall there, cinder block wall. That was what was there, along with the wall there on the other side, and a toilet and a shower stall. And that's really all we had back then. But when my niece moved in here with her husband for a while, living with my mom, they added in, you know, replaced the shower stall that we had, which was a concrete floor and a shower head. And we had a sink, but it wasn't that one. They replaced that and then built a little closet room you see out here in the front. So as you can see, the rooms were quite small but adequate. And that's where my mom and dad were. We did have a kitchen here, not this one. This is, of course, an upgrade and a replacement. The floors were basically concrete with throw rugs on them. There was no, this is a simulated wood floor here that they added in. But we had a small sink here and a refrigerator over there and a stove, and that was kind of it. So, and in this wall here that you see with the brick, my dad eventually added a wooden fireplace down here. In fact, I think that was there originally, and that's what we used to heat the basement later on. this whole back section, which you see walls and divisions, really wasn't there. It was kind of, we had curtains for walls hung from the ceiling, and we had a couple of bedrooms back here, which is where my sisters and I were at the time. Like I said, 52 is when we moved into here, and 56 was when we built the top. So for 4 years, we lived down here in this basement area. And this is the door to what was the fruit cellar, which my niece turned into a bedroom for their little boy, Danny. And there were shelves in here, and absolutely chock full of canned whatevers. I mean, my mom canned all kind of vegetables and fruit and whatnot, and did a lot of berry picking in the summer, so we had plenty of jam. And then back here, this wall wasn't there. That was kind of open directly to the old coal-burning furnace, and, you know, of course, standard heat. And then this door here, which I know I'm coming right on top of, was the what we called the coal bin. And so we literally through that square on the wall there, which has been boarded up, we shoveled coal into here, and this is where the coal was, and take the coal off the floor and shovel it and load it into the furnace, and that's what supplied our heat. So now I'll go back around. And so you can see it was pretty small, and there were, I guess in 56, there would have been Elaine, my oldest sister, myself. I was born in 47, and then Beverly was born in 52. And just before, or right about the time we moved upstairs, our youngest sister, Joyce, Joyce at the time would have been born. So there would have been 4 kids basically here, 3 girls and myself, living in this space down below here. So now we'll kind of walk through, and again, these walls are all part of the division that was made for my niece living down here, but none of it was there. This structure over here in the bottom is a little different, but the pump is the same. This was a pump, and the pipes going out through the wall went to a well. We have a well outside that was dug for drinking water and for whatever, our water supply. It was 90 feet deep and has a pump at the end of the pipes. That pump there is the original pump. And underneath it was a big red tank. They've replaced it with a different style of tank now. It's not in use anymore, but that's where we got our water for many, many years. In fact, till very recently, recently being the last 10 or 12 years ago, where my mom actually got connected up to city water, and of course, that was disconnected. And then I believe back here, even back then, this is probably where our hot water tank was for our hot water for our house at the time. I don't really remember that. And then this here is the location of where the furnace was, originally a coal furnace and now a gas furnace that was replaced from my mom sometime later. And then when the top was built, we added these stairs, of course, to go up to the house up above. I remember these kind of windows very well. They just kind of crank and open at a slant, tilt outward. But then you go up the stairs. Now heading towards the main level where we lived on. Now this is the kitchen that I grew up with. It's been here a long time. There was a wall here separating the kitchen from the dining room, kind of an L-shaped structure, sort of in the middle of the floor, and it was just enough to make the dining room separate. So if you can picture the hallway coming down from your right, opening into the living room, and then that hallway continued on to the left, but then there was a wall. We would be blocking our view of the living room. It was L-shaped, and there was a refrigerator was there. So that separated out and made this other room a true dining room separate from that. That was later knocked out and opened up. But that's the dining room, if you will, where we had all our meals together. We had a small pantry over here. You can see the door to. Never had a light in it, though. It was always annoying to try to find things because it was always dark in there. But the shelves were added later, but pretty much all our pantry-related items were here on the shelf. Kitchen cabinets are the same ones that were there when the house was built. The stove has been replaced. Never had a dishwasher. The Lazy Susan, which you see here in the corner, was a pretty modern thing for us that we had back then. We thought it was pretty cool. And of course the sink, and then this window actually looked to the outside originally when the house was built. And this was our back door, which was a kind of a split door where you could open up the top separate from the bottom, which we thought was kind of cool. And in the summertime,